G'day, Benny Wallington here with the art of positive priming, how to prime for a positive mindset and performance. And you'll see the little Froth Academy there. It's a new little project I've got going on, so all of my workshops are under that. If this is your first time with me, stoked to be presenting a workshop for you. Some of you might have seen my workshops before, so welcome back if that's you. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Kombumerri people, which is the land from which I'm recording from today. And I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to acknowledge your lineages, and I'd like to acknowledge the elders on the land from which you live as well. All right, let's get into it. That's a picture of me. And my promise today is, with this workshop, because it is a fun one, it's one of my favourite ones to run, is that you'll leave pumped and excited, seeing blind spots in your practices, and with revolutionary upgrades to your habits and lifestyle that you can implement today. Today I will cover healthy data for living an awesome life. What is priming? What am I even talking about with this priming thing? 5 big mistakes we make when priming for performance. I'm going to show you a positive prime session, which is the technology I've been working with over the past year. And it's one of my favorite pieces of technology for priming. And I'll leave you with some final thoughts, which I'm not 100% sure which they will be, but let's see. That's what I like about recording new workshops, because everything's upgraded, we can hope. Let's start with healthy data. So, data has been around for a long time. We've been writing words for a long time. Data can exist in your notepad. It doesn't have to be technology when we think about this. My first business was all about really just writing down how you felt in the morning and then drawing the patterns between that, which is what a computer or an app would do as well. But literally just think about that. You don't always have to think of your data as something that's been input into something like this, something that's kind of got that digital technology. This is a Whoop band. You might have heard of Oura rings. These are things that will make it easier or give you more of an objective measure on where you're at with your performance and the different habits and things that you're doing that you can do to improve it. So say you, if you haven't used these before, you're basically getting a readiness score, and you can do these with simple quizzes online as well. But essentially it's telling you, based on what you've been up to, where you're at physiologically. So if you've had a bad sleep or something like that, that's a really basic one. You can start to look at the data of why you had a bad sleep, anecdotally even, like what showed up that made you have a bad sleep. Did you stay up late? Did you eat too late? Did you have blue lights on? Do you the lights in your house too bright? So many things can contribute to this. I just wanted to give you that grounding in why it's really, really crucial to have some form of data. And if you don't like tech, just go to the basics. But the thing is, if you're not writing it down, or if you're not putting this information somewhere, we're really good, especially when it comes to negativity, to just sweep it under the rug and just go, that was last week. That was, that's not me anymore. And unfortunately, we're really just made up of habits. That's what we are. A lot of my work centers as a coach for the Flow Genome Project, which is, in my opinion, the best place to go for performance and flow state knowledge. We've worked with the likes of Google, Deloitte, Cisco, a bunch of other big names. Really cool. And this workshop is actually co-created by my colleague Rob Gronbeck and I. And he's also a Flow Genome Project coach. Together we've built protocols, which you might have experienced in another workshop, in one of my breathing workshops. And this is called the Beat Breath. So while I like to train with the best of the best, I also like to create, and that's what these workshops are about as well, is like, what can we do that's pushing the boundaries with the knowledge that we've got. So that's what we should always be trying to aim for in our work, in our private lives as well, if that floats your boat. And this thing that you can see here, we actually run it with some professional sporting teams. It's just gone to the Brisbane Bullets. For anyone who is in Queensland, that is a basketball team. Cool. So what is priming? Well, it's awesome and almost as awesome as this lady's hair. Priming works by activating an association or representation in your memory just before your next task. So, I'm getting primed for this event. It's literally something that we're doing all the time, whether we know it or not, both negative and positive. When you experience positive emotions, your mind broadens and you are open to new possibilities and ideas. This is really cool. I'll put a link in for some additional material, but it's basically, I can become more creative. I have a broader spectrum of options. I'm going to connect neural pathways that I didn't know possible, and I'm going to access those flow states. Research has shown your motivation can be heightened using captivating imagery, word association, and powerful music. Kind of like you don't really need for this to be explicit, right? We know that powerful music, and we know that when we read awesome things, especially about ourselves, we get a good report. It gives us a boost in mood. So why don't we do this more often, right? And our mirror neurons are brain responses to stimuli like the contagiousness of yawns. You're more likely to stand proud and perform if you're exposed to positive stimuli. So just like a yawn goes around the room, positivity can go around the room as well. So we can, prime ourselves to access this more often. All right, let's get into the mistakes that we make when priming for performance. So the 5 big mistakes we make. The first one is unconscious breathing, or you could call it mouth breathing. And if you've done any workshops with me, you'd probably have heard of some of these techniques. I'm going to stop saying that. So the solution is conscious breathing. And the simplest way to think about this is focusing on nasal breathing. So I always say, if you're not nasal breathing at all, start with a simple practice of sitting. You can do it right now and just closing your mouth and just breathing in at around 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out. Just make it super simple, super simple. And as you go sort of up through the gears, try and do sort of like longer, so maybe 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, get up to 5, 6, then try it standing. Okay? Then try it walking. I have a bit of a long story about how I had anxiety in my early 20s, and the psychologist told me to literally walk across Sydney from the top of the Elizabeth Park to Piermont. So it was about 20 minutes, and I nasal breathed for that whole walk. 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes of an evening, and within 3 days, the lump in my throat and the anxiety was gone. Kind of crazy. You can also look into options for ways to focus on nasal breathing at night. In spaces where you don't have to actually consciously make that decision. Look into that. I might put some links in. And as with everything, be careful. Diaphragmatic breathing is also good, which is big belly breathing, breathing down through the nose and into the belly. So you get that kind of Buddha belly action happening. And the third one, which I'll put a link in, is beat breathing. So it's my favorite thing. It's another thing that Rob and I have built and created. You can do it to any of your favorite songs. It's literally just putting on a jam that you love and then just breathing in time with the music. It's amazing. It can take you places. On to mistake number 2. Thinking that your morning starts in the morning. And the solution is restorative sleep. So we go, wow, it's morning routine. And we're getting our morning routine to be absolutely cracking. And then it's just not getting there. And a lot of the time, we've just forgotten that our morning routine actually starts the night before. And so a really simple one, this is like low-hanging fruit, for all of our clients that we take through this process. It's just picking a bedtime window, which is just an hour slot. I'm going to go to bed at this time. Now, if you have something like a Whoop band or an Aura ring, it'll calibrate and it'll tell you to do that. If you want to ask more questions about that, I'll put my email at the end. But you want to try and stick to a bedtime window. And this is also really good for a waking window as well. So if you can get those two in sync, with probably around the 8 to 9 hours worth of sleep, that would be fantastic. Minimum 7 is usually the jam. Digestion. A lot of people don't know that you really need to be eating 2 hours prior to going to bed. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So if you're wolfing dinner down because you're working late, and then you have dessert while you're watching telly, and then you go to bed, not real good. That kind of plugs into the sleep off ramp. So it is eat early, turn your lights down, get off your phones, read a book. There's heaps of good stuff. Matthew Walker is a cracker to read on how to have a great sleep off ramp. Mistake number 3, which is fighting your biological rhythm. The solution to this is understanding the flow cycle. So this comes direct from the Flow Genome Project. And really what I want to focus on here, I'll explain it, but it's the release and the recovery phases because they're quite similar. Essentially, when we've got a task, we go into a phase of struggle. That's when we're trying to work out what's going on. And oftentimes, to answer the question or get to the solution, we need to implant a release phase into that. And so these are all underpinned by different brainwave states and biochemicals that flood the brain. And so what we really want to think about is our release and our recovery in this instance. Because if we're going to go, let's say with the sleeping, we need to go release before we go to bed, right? We can't stay in a struggle phase because that's kind of the anxious mood. So what are our things that we're going to use that allow us to release and access bedtime or to recover better when we need it? So the beauty of Positive Prime, which I'll be sharing soon, is that it actually 2, 3, and 4, when we measured it using EEG technology, it actually showed up that we were getting 2s, 3s, and 4s, all at different points during watching a Positive Prime session. So that's kind of cool. So if you're ever in a struggle phase, you can use priming, you use positive priming to allow your brain to sort of switch lanes. And often what will happen in your subconscious, that's where you'll do all the work and you'll be able to solve that problem. And it also works for winding down, and it works for just optimizing your flow throughout the day. Mistake number 4, forgetting you can optimize your brain state. Solution, habit stacking. This is one of my favorite things to talk about as a performance coach. And essentially what habit stacking is when you put one habit with another one, or you could put a habit with another one and another one. So for example, you might be breathing, like I said before, when you get to that nasal place where you can actually walk while nasal breathing, then you might get to jogging, which is kind of next level. That's habit stacking. And you've got to give yourself permission to play, create, and innovate in this space. That's like huge when it comes to habit stacking. Things that you wouldn't have thought of before. You probably know, like, walking and podcasts or something like that. But, there's so much versatile creativity that we can find, especially when it comes to performance optimization tools. So, like even just rolling balls and things like that you use to stretch, and you can do that while you're winding down. If you got to watch your Netflix, do it while you're doing that, and just find those habit stacks that really deliver. Vice optimization. This is my baby. You might have heard me speak about vice optimization. Basically, what we're trying to do here is how can we take those things that are giving us a bit of a hard time, they were once really good, let's say like alcohol, Netflix, phones, all these things that are basically we need to optimize how we're using them because they're cutting into our health and well-being. And my theory on this is that once you understand these vices, then you can swing out the other side and you can get them into being a positive and an access to flow states or a trigger for flow states. And so you really want to find positive technologies, like the Calm and the Headspaces have become really positive and popular. And so what are your positive technologies? And with vice optimization, I'm always like, draw a line down the middle, right? Look at your apps on your phone. Which ones of them are actually conducive to a healthy lifestyle and which ones are draining you? And they might feel good and they give you that kind of dopamine kick, but which ones are actually doing good things for you? Mistake number 5 is going it alone. And the solution is finding legends to play with. It's always good. Learning and sharing. So when you've gone a little bit down the road, especially in the work scenario, have a yarn with your workmates and share the things that you've been learning. And safe space and belonging. It's really important. We need to find places where we can actually be vulnerable and share how we're going, have really great conversations. And it's conducive to group flow, which is the next thing. And you've got these things above, you can find cohesion. You have those beautiful flow states we have individually. You can also have those in groups. And actually, that's where you'll get the most in terms of performance. They've done a lot of testing on group flow. And when we're working together, it's kind of like 1 + 1 = 3. Well, it's really 1 + 1 = infinity because you're never sure what putting 2 people together in a flow state can actually achieve. It's magic. So I'm just going to take you quickly through why positive prime technology works. So this is the technology that I mentioned at the top. A positive prime session is an audiovisual experience that bypasses your conscious mind. We're exposed to millions of bits of information per second, but we only take in 7 bits at a time. And most of this is negative noise, just like I said before, the media, all sorts of things. I'm not going to generalize the whole media, but the majority of the mainstream media, it tends to be negative priming for us. Positive prime optimizes these bits of information with curated positivity. The images, the words, the music, selected for you to feel happy. And rediscover hope. I think in these times, and unleash your potential, which is rad. I think hope is going to be the word of 2022. Where can we find hope? Where can we who do we go to for hope? So we're going to do a session. I'm going to share with you a session that you can enjoy. And speaking of hope, I ran this workshop with a team who'd just been in lockdown for a long time. So wherever you're watching this from, hopefully you're out. If you're not, then Positive Prime's been a really great technology for folks who have been stuck in lockdowns around the world. And with this session, I just want you to focus on the screen. You don't have to try and lock in on the words or even the images. It's just about being present and allowing yourself just to immerse in the experience. I highly recommend nasal breathing. You can try that 3 in, 3 out. Just do what's comfortable. And also, if you can pick up a bit of beat breathing, you might just be getting the habit stack combo that you've been looking for. But don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just make sure just relax. So I invite you to kind of wiggle your shoulders and roll your neck if you need to, and just find a nice steady breath. Just relax while we play Marissa Peer's You Are Enough. Just want you to inquire into your body. How do you feel? Just a little check-in. Nothing too in-depth. Yeah, if that was useful, I hope it was. It's a really great way to prime for anything. Most people use it early in the morning, but it can be used, when the proverbial hits the fan, or at other times. I think I've talked about flow states, and really when it comes to flow states and practices, these priming practices, these positively priming practices that we've just mentioned, they can be the driftwood that keeps your head above water in choppy seas, when you feel like you're about to drown because everything's just going wrong. And they can also be the beautiful surfboard that allows you to access flow states. So when people talk about flow states and they get all lovey-dovey about it and talk about the magic of it, it's the same stuff. The foundational practices of flow states are the same foundational practices of just keeping our heads above water and doing the thing, fighting the good fight. And it's the same wood that you could potentially turn into a wooden unicorn and ride off into the sunset. Just a little joke by me. I always like to throw that one in there. Closing thoughts are really just to focus on what are the positive things that you are doing in your day-to-day routines that are having you perform and show up as your best. It's not so much about performance, it's just about feeling good in your body. So if you do have those negative technologies, sometimes it's just important to literally write that list of which ones are good, which ones are bad, and which ones can you do without. And then, you can just have a little bit of a time off. You don't have to delete it for good. You can always re-download apps or whatever it is. Just give yourself a little bit of a break, and that's where vice optimization comes in really handy. If you want to trial some time off, and then when it comes back, just go, okay, now I'm going to be really conscious of how I use this thing. Thanks. If you're interested in learning more, contact me at benny@101tokens.com. There's a whole Positive Prime platform, which is really cool. And I know a bunch about it and can point you in the right direction. Have an awesome, awesome, awesome rest of the day.